Hello, everybody. If it's Wednesday, it's Warhammer, and that must mean it's time for another episode of Warhammer Weekly. I am here, joined as always by my team tournament partner double. It's Tom. How you doing, Tom?
Hello, friends.
And also joining us, a man who needs very little introduction, but it would be rude not to. It's Mr. Dan Heelan of HeelanHammer. How you doing, sir? It's good to have you back on the show.
Cheers for having me. Hello, everybody.
It's great to have you back. Glad you're feeling better. We know you all had a little bout of sickness recently. I saw on Twitter, but you look better. I'm glad to see you're feeling better, sir.
Yeah, I might be a little bit spluttery, and I got a bit of water going on here. So I was very English. I was drinking my Earl Grey tea before if it's run out, which is very sad. So I'm on water now, but yeah.
Well, that's all right. If you see Dan have to mute for a moment or something, we'll give that. We're very glad to have you, sir. It's great to have you back on the show, and that's what we're going to talk about today because obviously, quite famously, in addition to HeelanHammer, Dan, you run what is, often has classically been the largest Warhammer / AOS GT in the world, an SCGT, a leader in more or less all things in the tournament scene. And so we wanted to talk to you about running a tournament, about SCGT, etc. So very excited about that.
Cool. Yeah, looking forward to it.
So, but first, before we get into that, of course, we need to talk about the news. And I think before we talk about, obviously there's one big story in the news. It's huge. It's dominating. It's everywhere. And that story is that I have yet another apron. I have a third new apron that my wife has got me. Let's just see if I can get it up on camera here. There you go. So it says my wife is a Warhammer Weekly widow. So this is what my wife got me. And she got a matching one that is inverted colors, pink with black letters that just says Warhammer Widow. So there you go.
Is she going to be ordering one for my wife as well?
Well, side note on that. So I am talking to the company that makes these. This is an open question. This isn't me trying to be like Mr. Marketing Guy. Just open question. Drop down in the comments after, below, or right now. If you would be interested, I can have I'm talking to the company that makes these. If I could do a big custom order of Warhammer Weekly aprons, if people would want those, I would be willing to get a bunch and then, resell them to people or whatever. If you're interested, if you think that's a fun thing you would want, I'm not generally about spruiking things or making money off this, but it seems a fun thing. So, and I find the apron very handy. I don't paint without it. So, okay. Joking aside, let's get to the real news. It's Daughters of Khaine time. We're not starting with the rumor engine. We'll come back to that 40K thing.
Oh, okay.
No.
We'll talk about the towel later.
Yeah, exactly.
Daughters of Khaine. This week, obviously, we're in full push. Pre-order is going to go up this weekend for all of the super awesome. Yeah, pre-orders this weekend, right? Yeah, pre-order. Pre-orders this weekend. Daughters of Khaine. We've been getting previews all week. We've received part 3. So part 1, the community site dove into who are the daughters, a fluff preview video, talked about changes to the Witch Elves, reinvention to the Bloodrack, the Cauldron, Bloodrack Shrine. We saw that there was an army-wide 6+ save. It seems like as an allegiance ability, there's a chart of kind of progressive cumulative abilities. As the battle progresses, they get whipped more and more into frenzies and then are awesome and kill things and are battle shock immune and rerolls and all that stuff. Some of the other information that slipped out in that first preview was that each of the elven gods, Morathi, Malarian, Tyrion, and Teclis, withdrew souls from captured Slaanesh and kind of built the rebuilt elven peoples in their own image. And so the Daughters of Khaine are Morathi's representation, but this seems to ultimately beg the question, what do the others look like? And so that'll be kind of exciting as things unfold as to what that might be. We found out that Khaine is dead, kind of. Morathi is siphoning power that's being offered to her, trying to make herself a true god. She has the Iron Heart of Khaine on lockdown, and she's using that to power herself. We found out that the statue of Khaine is going to be fielded individually, and that all of the Daughters of Khaine really, really hate Slaanesh. And so they are firmly ordered, despite a lot of people's frustrations and critiques. They are they're civilization builders. It may not be a civilization that you want to live in, but they're civilization builders. So they're order. They're firmly aligned with Order.
Yeah, let me just say a couple things on
go
this.
ahead.
So, and Dan, I want to throw over to you on your take on all this too. I love this presentation as an Order army, with people throwing around D&D alignments and stuff like that of lawful evil and those kind of things. I don't care. However you think about it, I'm okay with it makes perfect sense of why they're friends with who they're friends with. When the other forces that are out there, yep, I'd throw in with these guys too. Right. And I love their attitude. Let me also just say they're not helping their cause. They're just dooming themselves because they're obsessed. They have a lust for blood. It's in the names. They're seeking after an excess of murder and violence. All of this seeking after hedonism and pleasure, their lust and excess is only feeding the very being they're trying to suppress and imprison. It is only a matter of time before their collective passions free the best Chaos God, and Slaanesh reemerges, who will certainly be thankful for her freedom in only the best way possible, I'm sure, and
You're
gladly welcome them back in.
Stop. I know, we all know your love of Slaanesh, Vince. Just stop. It's okay. You'll someday, whatever. Anyway, so part 2, Morathi. We found out that they've moved into some new design space. There's a max of 3 wounds can be allocated to her per turn because of her Iron Heart, which is awesome and interesting, and it's going to mess with some lists, that's for sure. I've already had people trying to challenge me, trying to grudge me at Adepticon, knowing that they'll have Morathi, because they're like, ha, your KO can't shoot him down. We'll see about that. But yeah, so it'll be a fun go of it. We know that she does transform in game, doubles her current number of wounds. She can't be healed. She seems to have a worship through bloodshed command ability, 14 inches, 2 units, can fight or shoot. So pile in or shoot. But it seems like the community article seems like she also loses this ability when she transforms. It's unclear if it's replaced by a different one or not, but it does seem like she loses that. Also, that she has the Gaze of Morathi, which she can pick out individual units. Okay, so then finally the Malusai.
Hold on one moment before we jump forward.
Sorry.
So Dan, what did you think of that Iron Heart of Khaine ability, man? To lose no more than 3 wounds in a turn. I was really excited to see that design space explored. Right, I think that's a cool rule. It's very anti-Alpha Strike. It's unique. It's interesting. It's a cool, tough mechanic that we hadn't seen before.
Yeah, I mean, I remember the first time I played it and seeing it on the table, and I was like, "Does what?" Because at this point, we sort of had the book 10 minutes or had a look, played some games, and it was. I thought it was the coolest mechanic in the book, just because it's really something we haven't seen anywhere. You don't see it, and from a tactical point of view in a scenario game, I think it's super strong. It really is. I mean, I know obvious scenarios, things like duality of death and match play, those kind of things, but for a scenario-driven game, she can really ruin you by pinning stuff in place, and you just can't get rid of her. And she's no weakling either from it if you've seen some of the bits and pieces. So I think she's going to be a cool mechanic, especially in the way that army works overall. I think it's going to be really interesting to see how people use her. I think she'll be in a lot of lists. I think she's cool.
Yeah, it seems like, one of the things, before that article came up, one of the things I commented on to Tom was I said, I hope we solve, I think we were talking about it on Sunday, right? The day before the article went up.
Yep.
And I said, I hope they solve the Alariel problem, right? And that Alariel is so super cool, but she feels like completely unnecessary and even maybe detrimental to a good Sylvaneth list, right? Don't get me wrong, I love Alariel and I use her in fun games, but she's ultimately tough to put in a list, right? And not just because of her points cost. I mean, that is whatever it is. People put Star Drakes in lists all the time, and that fits. It's just more like she dies kind of too easy. She doesn't really do enough for the rest of the force. Yeah, and it feels like then I saw the article and I was like, nope, never mind. They solved this problem, right? That was my initial take on it. So I'm glad to hear you say that you think she'll show up. Also, the model. So. Yeah. What do you think of the model? Because let's be honest, I'll tell you right now, my camp, freaking amazing. One of my favorite models I've ever seen them make. But I want to know where you're living with this.
Yeah, I think we talked about this actually on the recent podcast. They did when we were at Games Workshop HQ. They do like a reveal bit where they showed us, and this was some time back, and it's always like quite top secret. And they did this reveal along with the Nurgle and bits and pieces they were showing us at the time, and everybody just stopped when that came out, and it was like, wow. I mean, obviously the heavy metal paint job's amazing, and to have it like 2 foot in front of you, able to pick it up. It was just, it was awesome. And it's just the posing on it and everything. I see a lot of people already talking about different conversions and the like that you can do with it, but it's just a really cool model. Just got a lot of dynamic. I'm sometimes with those bigger models, I'm not like as a hobbyist, I don't always look at them and think I really want to paint that. But that particular one I just thought was really cool. And it's not like too big. Doesn't look like what I call Tonka toy Warhammer, where you've just got like a couple of things. You're like, rah! It just fits for the aesthetic. It looks really good. So yeah, love it.
How big is it actually? So like, look, let's see if I can get out of the way here. Okay, so there's my Archeon right here, and he's 19 inches tall. Okay, because of what I put him up on. And so my question is, compared to like Archeon on the ground, who's normally like 12 inches if you don't have him up on ridiculous terrain like I do, or something like that, like how big is she? Because I can't tell from the pictures. They're always like an angle. She's not really next to other pictures. Did you get a sense of how big she actually is? She about as tall as Archeon, shorter?
No, I think she's a lot shorter. Yeah, again, I've gone from memory as a while back, but I think she's probably a good 10. Well, maybe not. I don't know. I'm looking at it now, trying to work it out, but probably like probably somewhere between 8 and 10 inches, maybe off the top of my head. I don't, because she's still, at the end of the day, she's still like a small elf, isn't she? But in obviously a bigger form. So, but because the wingspan and stuff, she does look impressive. But it's not Archeon size.
Okay, got it. All right, interesting. Because I was wondering if I was going to be able to go for 20 inches with her. Really crack the record. Just make her impossible to transport. All right.
No, I would say that relieves me. That means I can actually transport her.
Yeah. She's still a decent sized model, but yeah, not quite that size, I don't think.
Yeah, you worry about transport later. That's fine. We can solve that problem. That's just an engineering problem you solve later. Rule of cool wins overall. All right, Tommy. Now back to day 3. Then we got into the Melusai or whatever you say.
Yes,
the Medusa people.
The Medusa people. The Melusai shooty types. There's 2 different units we saw: shooty types and melee types. It looks like they're in units of 5. Shooty type has a Skyfire like mortal wound shot. It's only like 6+ to hit. It does a mortal wound. It's only 1 wound, not a D3. I saw a lot of people like losing their mind over this. They're like, it's like a cunning ruck with Skyfires. No, it's not, people. And not only that, we don't even have all of the evidence yet. So let's just dial it back, and we'll wait till we see the book. And yes, indeed, it is me suggesting that we dial it back. Let's just wait. We'll get all the numbers, and we'll see. I suspect that the design team, the playtesters have done a great job recently of really providing interesting, engaging, and balanced content.
Yeah, thanks, Dan.
Oh yeah, thanks, Dan. Cool.
Not me. You want to speak to those guys at Games Workshop? I think they've done a great job of it. They really, really honed their craft, and I think locking some of this down, which is really cool. But just going on the snakes, I call them the snakes again. Sorry, it's just
snakes.
But the snakes, I remember playing again another test game with this, and I was playing against 20 odd of them, and they have got a long threat range because they've got a high move, and then you've got quite a long range on the bow, which is quite cool. But they aren't Skyfires; they don't feel like that, but they're still pretty effective shooting. But in that list, I think you've seen, if you look at the Nurgle book, and I don't know what you guys think about this, but you look at the Nurgle book, you look at the Death book, have you felt that there's varying play styles in those books?
Yes,
so
100%.
Especially the Death. I think you can do Alpha Strike, you can do Grindy, you can do Hordes, you can do the Monster Mash, you can do loads of stuff. I think because of the kits we've got in play here, that might be slightly less. There's definitely a couple of distinct play styles that you can do, and that's one of them. I think because bearing in mind there isn't a lot of range in Screaming Combat Horde of elves. It really adds a nice dynamic with a couple of other units in there that, and again, I'm sure. Got to be a bit careful because I'm sure what they've shown, but there is a build there basically you can do, I think, with that, which for those people who want to do it, which is cool.
Nice.
Yeah, I mean, and honestly, I completely agree. It's one of the things that came up on our Nurgle sort of review as well, is that it occurred to me that the tension in the Nurgle book, and the thing I actually loved most about it, was that there are a bunch of different play styles that are all viable, but you can't do all of them at once, right? The tension is you got to figure out, what am I trying to achieve? You get to pick like sort of 2 things off the menu and make your meal, right? But you can't have the whole buffet, right? Or you run out of points. And it's totally the same with death. I think that's been what's really interesting, is you have lots of different ways you can build each of these armies that's interesting and compelling. You just can't build it in all ways at once. It can't be super fast and super shooty and super tough and super, you know, and so on and so forth. So I've been very excited by that design, because that shows a very much more refined knowledge of the design space. So no, it's good.
Yeah, I'm super excited. There's lots of neat options that we have been revealed so far. We'll see kind of what's coming next. We know there's conditional, you know, as kind of Dan alluded to, they reveal in the article that there's a conditional battle line on some of the snakes based on what general you take. We don't know what that general is yet, but that's coming. And so it does seem like you're going to be able to customize your forces based on kind of what you want to focus on. So it'll be neat. We do know that for the pre-orders this week, Morathi is 130 US, the book's 40, dice is 20, and cards are 15. We can only assume that obviously all the snakes are going to be on pre-order the following week.
Right.
So, the snakes, the snakes and the Melusai and the Canari, the snakes and the harpies.
Yes, and we have the harpies to look forward to tomorrow, the Canari or whatever. Which I'm very excited about. The more I look at those kits, because they've shown up in kind of the art, but the more I look at them, the more I really like that kit. Like, it is very dynamic. It's everything I used to wish the harpies were. You know what I mean? Like, harpy models have not had the best history at Games Workshop. Let's be honest here. Okay. I think, do we all remember the old Dark Elf harpies, or like the Beastmen harpies?
With the big claws.
Oh boy. Like, you go back far enough, some of those get pretty sketchy, let's say. Yeah, that seems like a fair word. But these blew me away, so I'm very excited about that.
Has any of the rules been shown for those yet?
No, no. Tomorrow.
Yeah, that'd be interesting then. Yeah, keep an eye on those. They're cool. They're really cool. I know they got dialed back from what they were, but they're still pretty cool. So definitely keep an eye on them.
I'm very excited about them. You know, just one more quick note on the Melusai real quick, and the sort of comparison to Skyfires. You know, obviously not having the D3 mortal wounds, only having 1 is a huge difference. But there's another really big difference. Even imagine they could move as fast. Like, I don't think they're probably that fast, but let's imagine they had a 16-inch move, just like Skyfires.
A 12 no fly.
Sure, whatever. They don't fly.
Yeah.
It's such a big deal. Like, because the problem with Skyfires is not only that they can go 16 and have a 40-inch threat range, it's that they can hop the lines. Because you keep them behind stuff where they can't get touched, then you hop them out, shoot, right? Like,
well, not only that, you don't have the disc to grind.
Yeah, you can't send them charge them through,
yeah, the melee capability, sure, absolutely. But like that,
or all rerolls, like the list just goes on,
on and on and on. Yes, absolutely. But my point was, like, to me, seriously, like, in using my Skyfires, the most valuable thing of them tactically is their flight. The number of times I've like just hopped over buildings to blow something away, or over an intermittent chaff line to just blow something away, right? Like, and you can't do that with ground pounders. So, yep. Okay. Anywho,
other things. Well, let's do the other exciting element. We GW was at its height of trolling this last week. Kudos to them and the community team for the glub video. If you haven't seen this, it was a video of a boat, a shipwreck. A rumor has it that it's a terrain piece. And by the way, like, that wasn't just a random like trolling. That wasn't an aquarium piece. If you look, like, the symbols on it are actually Sigmar. So that is like that's a real legitimate thing. Like, so there's something coming. And
then they just had a little goldfish swimming by it.
Yeah, and then like SpongeBob SquarePants, like yeah, it was great.
Little Calliope music followed by the question mark and then the word fiend, as though it's just like cinema verite over here. So like, I loved it. It was my favorite troll video ever. It sparked an entire massive discussion of like sea elves and fishmen and everything else. I loved everything about it. It meant nothing. It was all sound and fury, signifying nothing. I'll purposely not go to Dan right now because I don't want to put him on the spot. Because like in my head, I'm like, Dan knows exactly what that boat is, and he's like, you know what? I want to put him on the spot to talk about it. Like he's gotta maintain here. So
come on,
I won't throw over to him for this. But I loved the video. It's hilarious, and personally, I'm hopeful for like any kind of sea related race. I think sea elves would be cool. So we talked about Mathlin or whatever his name is.
Yeah. So rumor has it. So the things that are floating around, obviously, we're not going to go to Dan about any of this. But the things that are floating around are an entire like chat has formed on WhatsApp about the fishmen, and in the midst of those conversations where Ben Johnson is continuing to troll people, Mathalon, which is like an elven god, was pointed out, which was like Kothweek from Ulthuan. There was a special unit, the people that worshipped him, and it was like the people of the deep, and he's the god of the seas. And it was pointed out that like Ulthuan sank, not unlike Atlantis. Like where elves are already playing in this space of like Greek mythology, and we've seen some of that with the witch elves, and we have harpies and Medusa. And now we have an island, a paradise-like island that has sunk beneath the waves. And already some other potential savior people in the deep. It would not surprise me if all of this is kind of tied together, and they key off the Atlantis stuff with this. So it'll be interesting. I'm excited.
They also reminded everybody of the thing from the end times when the fury of the sea god of the elves was called down to stop Khaine basically directly. Namely Khaine, who was at that moment like imbued inside Tyrion because he drew the sword. And so like most of Tyrion's fleet was sunk. Like
because Lokir was there, and
it was like 300 style, right? Where like Xerxes' fleet is sunk by the sort of fury of the sea god from the Greek perspective, right? It was that sort of a moment in the story. So again, playing into that thing.
And we had heard two things. One, we had heard that like abyss, deep, like water elf stuff was coming. And we've also heard that and that a second elf release is coming. So this would actually line up potentially if we had to see fish elves release. The irony here being that Pete and Andy at LVO spoiled the Battletome Fishmen that was coming. And little did we know there may be actually a grain of hilarious truth in the trolling that they did as well. So
I would love it if somewhere in that image of Battletome Fishman there was like a hidden rune of Mathlin just kind of chilling out there, just like the Khaine logo. Like that'd be wonderful. All right, do we want to talk about this like very disappointing rumor engine for a moment?
Okay.
All right, let's do this. Okay, I'll share up here. Here we go. Let's all look at a 40K thing. There you go. There's a 40K thing.
Ooh.
So Tau, or maybe the Drukari, or whatever the space elves that are coming.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Yeah,
or another part of like
you're right. It's elves, space elves.
Yeah, indeed. Or another part of like another thermoplasmic conduit resonator adeptus thingamajiggy, terrain thing. Sure. Although this doesn't look like that type of material.
No, it's not Sector Mechanicus. I've painted a lot of that stuff. That's not the shape of the curves and stuff like that.
I mean, it doesn't have to be that exactly. There are other terrain bits in 40K besides that, but yes.
Cool. Yeah, that's I think that's
that. There you go. Yeah. Obviously, keep watching because sadly, the other quick news item just to touch on, they were going to do a stream originally today of the Ben showdown, the Ben down, if you will, Ben 10 showdown at Warhammer World, and show the new like Morathi and all the figs and everything. But they had sadly the internet died, so that's unfortunate, I guess. But they have said they're going to come back and do that anyways. They'll do the shows.
Morathi's wrath.
Clearly, yeah, that's what happens. Look, she's very deceptive. She wasn't ready to be revealed yet. Okay, So there
I've heard it's her time.
Well, I mean, yeah, she's not going to be denied any longer. So, but that's our news. Let's turn to some pick of the week. So, Dan, you're the guest. You get to go first here, buddy. What would you like to direct everybody to? What blog or video or podcast or massive tournament that currently has signups open would you like to direct everybody to? You know, just if we were going to throw out options.
It's always a tough one, isn't it? I think. But one I've really been impressed with recently is this one called HeelanHammer.com. It's a podcast. It's been going for around 9-10 years. The host's pretty funny on occasion. Very informative, of course, you know. Yeah, self-promotion, why not? So I'll go check that out. On a serious note, we had a bit of a break, didn't we, for about 3 months, and I think that we're still I had another listener this week said I didn't even know you guys were back, so it's worth saying we have been back. We're on a slightly slower release schedule, and yeah, join us to talk about similar things to you guys talk about, you know, Warhammer, hobby, what news, what we've been up to, tournaments. And yeah, as a result, the South Coast GT, you mentioned it earlier. I'm lucky enough with 2 of my mates to run that. And historically, that's been a 200-player singles event. This year, it's slightly less because of the we had a forced date move and it's clashed with a few things. But we're still 150 plus, should be quite cool. But there's spaces, so if you're tempted with all these cool, exciting stuff coming out, it's in May, so you've got plenty of time to paint your stuff and get it done. All the details are at heelanhammer.com/scgt. You got to pick up all the ticket details and all the rest of it there. That would be my pick.
That's a good pick. It's solid. I've heard it a few times. It's decent. I don't know the guys who do it, but they seem like they're pretty well informed and the nice guys.
Yeah.
Yeah. Whoever they happen to be.
Yeah.
No. What I'll say is it's good to have you back in all seriousness. I hope that the time, lets you recharge your batteries. I know there's also been like a refocus and you're, sort of re-examining your format, that kind of thing, right? Because of the sort of the time. And as you mentioned, you guys have been at this longer than anybody. Yeah. I mean, that I think is true. So I think you're more than entitled to a little vacation. That's all right. So, but we're glad to have you back, sir, for sure. Absolutely.
No, I appreciate it. I think that the break's always nice. I mean, again, I'd like to avoid him if we can, but I really wasn't sure at that moment in time if we could make it work. But coming back with a bit of the break just allowed me to get some stuff done outside, but it also let us look at what we were doing, because the thing is with the play testing, all jokes aside, it's a brilliant thing to do, but with the release schedule we had with the show, plus play testing, plus my general life that goes on, it was too much. So we've just moved some things around now, and it's all quite nice. So yeah, good.
Excellent. That is good to hear. Well, I will put the link down below for SCGT. If you are in any way able to get to England for this tournament and you have or want to play in truly, one of the best tournaments in the world, then you should do it. Go hit that link. Like you said, there's still space. So there you go. Tommy, what about you, sir? What's your pick?
I'm going to do a little bit of spruiking myself. I don't have a lot of releases often. And so, I finally finished up my new kind of round of KO Fireslayer conversion stuff. And so we'll have the link to my blog below, the new one that I've just published. But I have a bunch of I have my new Ironclad in there, and my Fireslayers and all of that here. I'll just flip through some stuff. Some of the new models and conversions and everything with some of the lore and all that. So I'd encourage you all to come check out the blog. So
very nice. Yes, your army looks great, Tom. It's a great accomplishment, always, of course, to finish a force, for anybody, but to have a whole force that's fully converted as well is pretty awesome, my friend. So well done. I look forward to. Sure. You're pretty close for this particular wave of it. You're ready for the coming tournament.
Wave 2 is done. And now I'm sizing up how many Thunders I actually want to paint for wave 3.
Sure. You're ready for the tournament we're going to in 2 days. So there you go. I look forward to what's that?
Sorry, can I just ask you a quick question? Because I just noticed in the background there, is that like somebody like your missus walking around with a blanket behind your chair, or is that like a dog?
That's it. Yes. That's my dog. Hey.
I watched it. There was a video doing the rounds on Facebook the other day where there's a Skype interview with a guy and his kids are running in behind him, and then presumably the babysitter runs in and tries to grab him out the back of it. And I pictured that like somebody walking around trying to sneak in and pick up your washing up or whatever to take it out and clean it. But no, it's a dog.
No,
sorry,
my
carry
dogs. You're just fine. It's a good
question. Professionalism. Carry on.
They're just. I have 2 dogs and they're just playing with each other right now because my wife is not home yet to handle them. So I'm on dog patrol. All right.
I've got mine too from me actually, but he's sleeping.
There you go. If only. All right. So at any rate, my pick of the week. I actually want to direct everybody to, we kind of mentioned this offhand, but I did want to go ahead and throw the link down below. They did an actual, so for the Daughters of Khaine, they did an interview with Jeremy, I don't know how to say his last name, Vitok? I don't know how you say his last name. So, and he talks about the fluff. So he's going in detail on the fluff and the story of the army. And he's the sort of person who designed a lot of the narrative around this. As I understand it, he's also the person who did the Caradhran Overlord fluff. And Dan, do you know Jeremy? Have you met this gentleman?
Do you know what? I haven't. I don't think he's UK based. So I think he's your way.
Oh, really?
As I understand it. But yeah, no, I haven't. Most of the writers we bumped into at some point or spoke to, but yeah, not him.
Gotcha. But he does a great video. He's very passionate about it. He will get you enthused for this army. So if you're kind of on the fence or you want to know more about the background of how the daughters are working, I would highly encourage you to check this video out. It was super cool. So I'll link it down below. It's only about 6 minutes, but he really does kind of breeze through everything and talk about their place in the world. And there you go. So cool. Awesome. All right, let's talk about some hobby time. So we all know what Tom's been working on because he just shared it. Tom's hobby time was his pick of the week.
No, I have something else.
All right. Well, you don't get to go yet. Dan gets to go first. All right. So Dan, what have you been working on, sir? What's on your hobby table?
So at the minute, I've been having I've got a Necromunda Ganger on my desk at the moment to take it away from Age of Sigmar for a minute. I've been trying to. I think, did I speak to you, Vince, about trying to improve my painting? I can't remember now.
A little bit. We talked some time ago. Yeah.
Yeah, it's been something that I've set myself as a goal this year. It's going to be a bit of a slow burner, but I just wanted to. I got to a point where I was just knocking things out with dry brushes and washes and things, and I thought I want to do a little bit more of trying to learn some new techniques and stuff. I'm probably going to invest in an airbrush shortly, but my time's been really short. So at the minute, I've got a Goliath Ganger on my desk that I've been just trying to take a little bit more time with. So he's about 50% done. Been struggling to make my true metallics look good. But it turns out a lot of different glazes and washes will help that. So that's been quite cool. So I've been doing that. I'd like to I want to be finished, but then I've decided, is that good, is it?
This is what you want. So if you want it, I don't know what metal paint you're using right now, but if you're interested in your true metallics, Vallejo metal color, I'm sure you can get it in the UK. This is the best acrylic metal paint on the market. I'm sorry to everybody else who likes anything else. You're wrong. In the acrylic area, this is the only one. I don't normally take that kind of a stance. With every paint, I don't care. Use whatever paint you like GW paints, Vallejo, Army Painter, Scale 75. I don't care. Whatever works for you. All paints are good. All paints are fine. When it comes to true metallic metal, this is sorcery in a bottle. It is magic. It is bottled lightning. It is the only thing that makes metal look like metal without without leaving acrylics. There are better paints in non-acrylic, but ain't nobody got time for that. So.
And Vince has actually done a review video of all of the metals, all of them side by side, pigment wise.
That's worth checking out, then. Yeah. But yeah, it's always been a bit of a problem that I think trying to make it pop. But yeah, I struggle. I've got slight color problems anyway, but I struggle with seeing the highlights. And then you look at it either in a photo that you've taken and put on Twitter, or you look at it in a different light. You're like, oh, that's bad. You can't think about it. You can't quite see it. So.
Yeah, the Necromunda models are so awesome to paint. I did an Escher gang when they came out. I loved them, man. Those the models are really cool. I haven't got to do any of the Goliaths yet. Have you found them to be fun as well?
That's the one. Yeah, that's what we did at the minute, just a Goliath, because I steer away from skin like the plague normally. So I thought, well, I'll give it a go just because I can play with some new tones. It's one of the areas I'm not particularly happy with, but I got it to a point where I was like, I'm not mucking around with it anymore. That'll do. I just wanted to play around with some areas. There was a book that I bought I covered it on the show. Is it Figure something? It's a French guy did a book on painting miniatures and just generally some of the concepts, and it was interesting to see how I was trying to focus a little bit more on where to draw the eye in terms of
Sure.
trying to create areas where there's a distinctive brightness to it over some of the other models and stuff like that. So it's just playing around with different techniques. Obviously, like everything, it's going to take a lot more practice than one model, but it's cool to actually just stop and think a little bit more rather than that generic lighting that we tend to grow up with Games Workshop, where you just outline everything with 2 highlights and that's it. So
right,
which you'll know, your stuff's great, so I'm sure you appreciate that.
Yeah, totally. No, that's awesome. I like it's fun to both paint. It's fun to do all of that, right? Like I enjoy all of it. Like I enjoy a good speed paint to get some stuff knocked out, to get some good color on things. Nothing wrong with that. It's great to because you get that satisfaction fast. Like you knock out a unit, you're like, boom, heck yeah, this unit's ready to go. A couple hours work. Like that's a good feeling. But at the same time, it can also be fun. Like I love it when I'm working on a new project and I know I'm just going to sit there and okay, I'm just going to glaze skin tones for the next 5 hours. Like I get zen about it. It just becomes like sort of this thing. You just get into a zone and you don't notice the time go by anymore.
Nope.
Focusing.
Not interested.
So, but no, that's awesome. I am thinking about very heavily of picking up the squat dude when he's available, just because. Yeah, man, I love I hate dwarves, but I'll buy a space dwarf. He'd be fun to paint. Like that gooky little guy would be great. It'd be great to paint the only space dwarf in existence. So there you go.
Well, that said,
I'm not counting Grombardil in Space Marine armor. I'm not counting him.
No, you can't. Yeah. I'm with you on that.
I'm going to paint a space dwarf. He's going to get converted over.
Sure. Yeah, he's a great KO model too with his little shades. But anyway, okay, Tom, to you, sir. What are you working on?
Yeah, so there's clearly no rest for the wicked. I got my stuff done for this weekend and immediately jumped into kind of the next stages of projects, preparing for ACON for a couple of things I'm going to take. And so, behold, I now have
That's a strong word. Behold,
I now have a put together Knight of Zeros for my force.
Oh my God, you made the guy from Flash Gordon.
I did.
That's what that is. I don't remember his name. Crap.
Brian Blessed, that guy.
Yeah, it's Gordon's alive. It's that guy.
I'm very aware of what I did, and it was very intentional. This is my Knight of Zeros. I need to green stuff him still, but then I'm going to green stuff him and prime him up, and he's coming to Adepticon with me.
He's cool. I think Adepticon, it only dawned on me how soon it is, because I've already started thinking, I could take death, and then I was thinking, I'd have to paint this and that, and you look at it, it's what, 4 or 5 weeks away, something like that.
It is basically as of today, we're more or less a solid month away. It's exactly 31 days or whatever. Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah. On this day, 4 weeks from now, they'll be doing the next GW reveal. Right. It'll be the pre-show day. So
I was going to take a pretty robust infantry KO force, and I got a clarification on a rule from Alex for ACON, and I'm like, nope, not taking that. So that cleared about 30 models off of my table for the next month. So went back to list writing. It'll be exciting. Here we go.
So for my hobby time, I have been working on my final piece for Adepticon for Crystal Brush, ironically. That'll also, hopefully, fingers crossed, be going over to Warhammer Fest in May. But I've been working on the... there you go, she's in 2 parts. But I've been working on the War Queen.
Such a cool model, isn't it?
It's so good. I love this model. Are you kidding me? As soon as I saw her, I was like, I love this thing. And sometimes you look at it in the art and the picture, and then I get it, and I'm like, nah, you can't compete with this because it just doesn't work out right. But this girl, I'm excited. The cloak, she has the perfect cloak for freehand because it has depth, but it's not teeny tiny little waves. It's more of a gentle swooping cloak. You don't want anything too flat or anything too this kind of crap because then it becomes impossible to freehand. Perfect. She has lots of skin. So I could do lots of really extreme skin tone changes. That was a couple hours of skin tone things, and that was that.
Did you airbrush base the skin tone, or do you start as it all brush?
I always start with the airbrush just to get a solid block of the color down. on it, and then like I'll build in like a little bit of area shadow and a little bit of area highlight, just to like really kind of map out. But that's like 10% of the work, especially by time. What it really does is give you a perfectly smooth surface to work your glazes on, right? And like for me personally, skin tone is all about glazes. Like you have to have lots of colors in skin tone to make it real, unless you're painting me, which apparently the only color you need is like white. As you're like looking at this right now, it looks like I haven't been in the sun for years. But you just need like a pale ghost white and you're good to go. But for most human beings who actually go outside their house, you want some kind of like reds and tans and browns and sepias and pinks and purples and all that kind of stuff. So there you go.
Well, for those that don't know, Vince has done a hobby cheating video on Flash, and I just recommend that everyone do that.
I've done two of them, yes. One is about doing it fast, and one is about doing it very detailed, and I think Tom likes the fast one.
I like the fast one. I did all of my KO, or all my Fire Slayers with the fast one, and it's worth your time watching the 15 or 20-minute video. For it's like some airbrushing, some washing, a little bit more airbrushing, you're done. Like, truly done with the skin. It's amazing. Especially for those that are planning on doing a bunch of Daughters of Khaine, this would be a great technique for them.
I'm looking forward to them, although my daughters are going to be unusually colored. So there you go. All right. So let's get into this. Let's get into our feature segment. We've got the man himself on, and I thought let's talk about something that I think, Dan, you may know a little bit about, which is running tournaments. And I thought we'd start at the beginning. We mentioned SCGT and when it's coming up. And as I said, link will be down below. But we already kind of covered the first question, which is, what is SCGT, South Coast GT? But you want to dive into it a little more of what you're looking at this year, because there's a lot actually going on there beyond just the main tournament, right? Besides the main games, you've got a lot of other stuff going on as well.
Yeah, so the main thing is this is our 10th year. So it's our 10th year anniversary. But the tagline, I don't think it's gone out yet, but it's the 10th gate is the tagline. It links to a bit of a Malpo, Malign Portent's sort of storyline and stuff, because we've found since Age of Sigmar come out, I think it's important to have the option for people who are in, because we have a wider than anywhere else in the UK, people who come for the tournament for different reasons and different goals. We like to have a little bit of a lore angle on it as well for people that really want to embrace that. So, but ultimately our concern is that we have a nice tournament that finds a winner. But so we've got that going on. And it's normally 6 games because that's Mam's Warhammer at those points. I mean, I'm sure somebody mathematically told me it's meant to be 7 or 8 to find a winner. But anyway, we can only do 6, so we do 6. It's going to be, we quite often put our own scenarios in it, but this year we've gone with match play. Obviously, you've got potential 12 scenarios on the match play for the General's Handbook for the 2 years. You've also got a couple of match play scenarios in Malign Portent, so that we haven't decided yet what's going in the pack, but there's an option there. So that's cool. But yeah, it'll be match play straight up, so which is quite good because a lot of people, a big tournament like that, it's the easiest way to. Everyone knows what that does, it's good. And then alongside that, we also like to celebrate the hobby. So what's always hotly contested is we have a coolest army prize, which is massive. People go, I don't know if you guys have seen any of the coverage of this over years, people go absolutely insane to try and do it. Steve Foote, who's won it repeatedly for many years, isn't actually going to be there because the date changed this year, so the competition's wide open. Although he didn't win it last year, I don't think, from memory. So but yeah, people do all sorts, they come in. I mean, Steve's turned up in full fancy dress, giant props, needs electric to power some stuff, like they go out, so that's good. And then of course we have like a first, second, third army painting prize, and alongside that on the Saturday night we actually have an external painting competition where people can bring any models they want, and there's player votes on that, and then we give away like a big sword, or is our version of the Slayer sword really, on a bit of a judged idea. That seems to be gaining momentum every year, and the standard seems to get higher, so that's quite cool. And then I think this year we've got a couple of quirky side games, I think, for people, because it's the 10th year anniversary. We're tempted to throw in some Warhammer bingo. Don't know if you've ever seen this at tournaments, but you have silly things and you're trying to get a bingo, and it'll probably be throwing things back to other editions. So we've got some quirky ideas just to remind people of what it was like in other editions, with some of the stuff we used to argue about, and some of the things we used to do. So yeah, so that's all going on. But ultimately, yeah, we want to find a winner for a match play tournament, and that's and it's always exciting to see what people build. You know, it's got, because the size of the event is, it's got a lot of prestige, and a lot of people put a lot of time in trying to figure out the cutting edge builds, and I enjoy seeing them. So yeah, it's going to be good.
Yeah, we've had Steve on the show before, and I remember for, was it last year or the year before, he brought the whole big Sylvaneth thing, and he did all the like gardening videos leading up to it. You know what I mean?
Yes,
Like, it was like,
That was last year, wasn't it?
I don't remember. Maybe. I don't know. Anyway, but yes, like his stuff is always so impressive. And I think that's, the point you made there that's well worth recognizing is that as that you've grown this, what's really shown to me, especially over the last couple of years, is how much you've grown the appeal to everybody, no matter how they hobby, right? Like you said, yeah, sure, that at the end of the tournament, there's going to be a winner based on the games and all that. But there's so many other things, people who gain a lot of like psychological utility out of other aspects of the hobby, whether it be narrative, whether it be the hobby and painting, making a giant cool army, painting a single figure, whatever. There's still lots of ways where they can engage, right? So I think that's what's impressed me the most as you've continued to grow this event. I think there's something very important for like big tournaments or even mid-sized tournaments that want to grow up to bigger tournaments, in that like when you make something across the board for everybody will want to come, right? Like that's you're not detracting from the main games by having this stuff, right? Like it's still there. It's still the same. You're just letting these other things also go on and happen. You're facilitating them. So that's super cool.
Yeah, I think it's important because you don't, let's be realistic about it. And I say this to people who are looking to start out their tournament career. If you're fairly new to the scene or you do a couple of events a year, whatever, the chances of you winning or being in that upper echelon at a 200-player event are very slim.
Right.
And, finishing in the top 20 is a fantastic result in a tournament like that. So you want other things to concentrate on. I mean, one of the things we were talking about potentially, we changed the title round. We were tempted to call it the Sands of Time this year, and have and one of the things we thought about doing was giving the narrative players something to do in game as well. So there might be a secondary objective, and we would give a trophy that's the champion of time. And we had this idea where we could have them doing objectives in game. It does nothing to your score, does nothing to whether you're going to win the match play event, but it does give you an opportunity to compete for yet another trophy for something that rewards playing in a narrative manner with how we're going to do it. So, but yeah, I think it's and like people come in and they don't care how they're doing the game, and they're coming for one of the paint prizes, or they're coming for the coolest army, or all those kind of things. And it's cool to see that, because yeah, you want people competing in all the different aspects. It's just more reasons to turn up, I think.
It's funny you mentioned that secondary thing, because there was a tournament that Tom and I attended this last year, back in 2017, that had that sort of a thing set up. There was a secondary scheme objective, and there was an award for completing, for like doing the best on all the secondary objective. And, fair story. I basically went 1-4. Like that's a real thing that happened. Like I lost 4 of my games. But I completed my secondary objective, my scheme, in every game. And I was like the only person who actually got the sort of secondary schemey thing off every game. And so I won that. I felt great. I was like, yay, this is wonderful. I don't care that I said I lost 4 games. Well, I don't know.
The schemer.
Yeah, the schemer. Yeah. Yeah, it was great. Like seriously, at the end, I didn't walk out of that feeling like I lost 4 games. You understand what I mean? Like there's a very distinct feeling you have when you do that bad. This was not that.
Yeah.
So, there you go. I think it's great to let people engage in those different ways. So
yeah, I think that, quite a few people I know there's Blood and Glory in the UK have been trying to do it, and a few other tournaments have tried to go more down the Adepticon type route, where you get a lot of other stuff going on. Our venue doesn't really support it, and to be honest, I'm not sure with the event we've got you need it, but there is always that option that if people are running events, it can do, is try and make it into a bit more of a convention type feel. But I think you very much need a venue to do it, and that's difficult in the UK where spaces are expensive, but maybe in the US it's more viable.
Yeah, it's probably a little cheaper over here to get like, a big amount of space, depending on where you're at, I suppose. But so let's rewind the clock. You mentioned this is the 10th anniversary. Let's go back to the beginning. How did this all start? How did you come to, run SCGT? Let's talk about sort of the early years and how this all came together. What did it grow out of?
It was more so at the time. So a bit of history. I've been playing tournaments since 1999, so quite some time. And funny enough, there were some pictures doing the rounds on Twitter the other day of a very young me outside a minibus full of people that we did, and we were chatting. I had Chris Myhill, who's been on the show recently, rounds playing a game. I was using my def, and he was using a list he's using for a team tournament, and he was saying his dad's in that photo. So I played with his dad when I was younger, and obviously now I'm playing him. It's bizarre, and it's almost like Warhammer Generations, and it does. And at the time, I think around 2008, 2009 might have been the first one. I'd got a bit disgruntled actually. I was a very competitive player, having a reasonable run of results and things, and I was getting disgruntled with the tournaments. I didn't feel they were actually the rules packs that were coming out were a bit outdated. Didn't really suit what I felt players wanted, and I know Russ and Wayne, who were my fellow organisers, felt the same. So we talked about doing one. I was living in Swindon at the time in the UK, just how I met Russ, and we thought, maybe we'll run one. But I also said to Wayne as well, we should run a tournament at one point, and then I ended up moving down here, and we thought, yeah, okay, well, the three of us, we've all got an idea. Russ and I, Wayne and I travelled for years together. Russ and I travelled for years together to tournaments, and we thought, yeah, we can do a better job. It might sound a little bit arrogant, but we did. But just at the time, we just felt we knew how to write a better pack than other people. We knew what us as competitive tournament players wanted, and that's what our aim was to make sure that everybody had a good time. We weren't sure if it was going to make any money. There was a bit of a concern. Making money is never a concern, but you obviously want it to break even.
Right.
And the venue we got and the costs we had were a bit of a concern. And I think that's why you don't see too many independent events in the UK, is because venues cost so much money. You see them a lot of gaming centres. We're quite lucky. We've had a few gaming centres over the years, and people have run events there. But you don't see pure independent ones too often in the UK, and it's because there's a lot of financial commitment to it. So, but we were really lucky. First year, we had 80, 90 players, and then it sort of went from there right up until, the 8th edition, 200 pluses, people shouting at me about ticket allocation because they wanted in and all the rest of it. And it's been really cool. But I think it's, I say to people all the time, if you want to create a tournament, you should just go and do it and just focus on player experience. You never get everything right. One year people moaned about the price of tea, for example. But as long as you're driven to make it a better event, then you'll always be fine. Again, there's only so much you can do, but as long as people, till you run out of ideas, but as long as people enjoy what it is you are doing, then it's fine. I think it's good. But yeah, so it started really from a want to create the type of tournament we would want to play in, and that's always our primary goal. When we look at each year, we think, what do we want to do this year? How would we want to play Warhammer? And that's what we do. That's what we can do.
Right on. It's fascinating because you mentioned at that time, you're sort of, when you were thinking about where you were in the game and being a very competitive player in 2008, 9, that would have been the tail end of 7th, if memory serves, right?
Yeah. Probably not quite the tail end for 7th. 7th disappeared in 2010, maybe.
Yeah.
Was it that way?
I think it was 10. Yeah. 10 or that sounds right. I don't know. It all becomes a blur. You know what I mean?
Vampire Accounts released, were one of the first releases, I think, for 8th, and they were 2010.
Okay. Yeah, I think I remember winning a big 100-player event in 2009. So, and I think it wasn't far after that. So probably 2010, for 8th. So,
but you mentioned being you're a very competitive player at that time. You're this very sort of hard-edged tournament guy. We can write this rules pack better. We can do this. How has your obviously, I think in the intervening decade, I would imagine maybe your outlook on the world and the way that you're gaming and you engage with your hobby has probably changed some, just as your life has changed and your free time has changed. Because you obviously had children in there, and stuff like that. So how has your sort of view, how did your view on running the tournament evolve over time, similarly as your sort of own personal view on the hobby changed?
Yeah, I don't know the goal, because the goal's always been the same, which is to provide an event that we would want to play in. So, Russ, as one of the organisers, has never stopped playing events.
Right.
So, well, none of us have ever stopped playing events, but he's still, as you know, he won the UK Masters, not this year, last year, and everything else. He's been a super competitive, one of the UK's consistent best for years. So he's always coming at it from that angle. I'm still very competitive in terms of wanting to be good. I just don't have the time in terms of what we always joke about is the Warhammer treadmill. You know, if you want to be competitive consistently, you need to keep those armies coming. You need to make sure you get the games. I mean, I just play, you know, ridiculous amounts of games every year. You know, sometimes I'm playing 2 a week, and then you do a tournament every month. You know, it's that kind of level. It's not that now. And so, although my attendance and competitiveness at tournaments, for example, may have dropped down, the goal's the same. You know, we still want to create a competitive tournament for people, and hopefully the experience of what we now 19 years worth of events and things helps us have a picture of what people want. And we try and listen to feedback, of course, every year. And that was in the early stages. We always used to have, when the Warhammer forum was a thing, we always used to have a feedback thread every year where people could post their thoughts, and then we'd review it when we come around. Since that died, we haven't done it, but we always take feedback from sources where we can, luckily through the medium of Twitter, which I know you guys are all over. You can get instant feedback from people, and good or bad, and it just helps you keep going. But yeah, I think you can change certainly how you enjoy the hobby, but if the goals are the same, you can still run a good event. I mean, there was a tournament in the UK where some of the guys, I think when they lose it is if the organisers stop playing that system, and that happened in the UK in a couple of events, the organisers stop playing it, and then the rules packs become outdated, which is effectively what happened around the time we decided to do it. The people running it weren't playing, and then they don't know what makes a good game. So if that ever happens, people, you can shout at me. So
do you think because SCGT, as we've mentioned, is like, you know, it's you, it's Russ, the Face Hammer guys, for those not familiar, do you think the collaborative nature of the fact that you're all organizing it together has sort of helped you remain consistent and cover a broad base of sort of what people would want out of a tournament, as opposed to sort of a singular vision? Do you think it's helped to have other ideas and need to find a collaborative mix?
Yeah, I mean, and over the years, sometimes we've clashed on pack. You know, one of us thinks this, one of us thinks that, one of them don't care. You know, it's always been that. And Russ and I have very much taken the lead normally on rules of what we do. And in the early years, I used to write a lot. In the later years, Russ has wrote a lot, and I think he's done a great job of moving, especially when we moved into Age of Sigmar. Obviously, the current General's Handbook that we play now was based on a system that Russ and I wrote with the points and things. So it spent a lot of time doing these kind of things over the years, and we're in a place now where actually running Warhammer tournaments is easy as ever going to be. We've got the easiest rule system, we've got a point system that works, we've got a list system that's easy to mark. Do you know what I mean? Like, it's a really good tournament game at the moment, which makes it easier. But yeah, no, going back to your original question, I think you need it, because you also, all three of you will sway, if you're going to have longevity, you'll sway in how enthusiastic you are and how busy you are in life, and you need the others to support when one of you's busy, one of you's not. So I think that's how we've managed to maintain the sort of the progress over the years, is having that to lean on each other, basically.
Just to jump in real quick, Dan, I want to affirm something you said about, like, the system that we have is probably one of the best tournament games that, you know, like, that's out there that we've ever had. If you want evidence of this, just look at how many comp packs exist. How many events are running special comps for the game system itself? None. Everybody's running the game stock.
Yeah.
At best you get like an FAQ. Right, like, we're not going to do this, or this is how we interpret this, or maybe you're not allowed to have a Balewind or something. Like it's just so minimal,
right?
You know, like it's a couple of things that people chew around the edges just to make sure things are clear and everybody's on the same foot.
I think a lot of credit's got to go to Games Workshop for this, though, because their approach to it. I know they've got obviously community playtesters that are tournament gamers, but and maybe it's just age has evolved. I mean, you've got people in there. I mean, one of the most successful UK tournament players of all time in the UK, Ben Johnson, is in charge of deciding how the books get done and things. Do you know what I mean? Like, we're very lucky. Pete Foley, who's, you know, one of the main men in there, is a UK tournament gamer, a very good one. So it helps having these people in places, because then they're coming at it from an angle that we probably haven't had in the UK since the 90s, where they used to play, you know, where your Gav Thorpes and your Jervis Johnsons might pop up at a tournament that you were at, you know, that kind of thing. So and obviously they've released this new FAQ schedule. You can see there's a commitment there to doing it. Certainly internally, they've been really drilling down, and hopefully you've seen that in the rules writings a lot a lot sharper from a mechanics point of view in the last few books and things. And I think all that really helps, doesn't it? So it's really good job from them, I think.
I completely agree. And, you know, it's funny mentioning like Ben and Pete in the background in the game and being competitive players. Like one of the very solid things for Magic and what Wizards did is start recruiting from the top of like their pro players in people who also had a great talent for working collaboratively for you know, doing game design, but were also great players and understood the game, right? They brought them in. I think this is the same thing. Like having these people join the team gives you that perspective of somebody who was in the trenches, quote unquote, for years, right? And has that passion for the game from that angle. So yeah, and you know, we kind of were talking about this a little bit ago and a little bit before the show. These last books have impressed me more than even what I saw the year before, which was great. You know, I mean, like that's no hit on what I saw before. It's just like it seems like we've entered a confident phase of this rules writing, right? There aren't many things that are out of bounds now. The last FAQ tramped down a few of the like sort of worst skewy armies. I don't know of anybody who's really complaining about too many any units that are just like, you know, way off the mark on points or something like that. Like last year, somebody occasionally was like, you know, there's a few that were probably outstanding, your Skyfires or something like that, right?
Yeah, but I mean, that was the period, you know, when you look at it, there's a couple of books there. The Blades of Khorne book was horrendous in terms of the mechanically written. You've seen the size of the FAQ on that one. You know, Zinch is well documented, both in rules and power. It's ridiculous, isn't it? Let's face it, in parts. And, you know, the Caradhran, I think they're Caradhran in a lot of ways, in places. And they all come out at the same time. They're all... it was a heavy load in order to get them play tested. There's lots of things that can contribute to it, but you can see it. And, you know, I think lessons have been learned since then. The books have been, I think anyway, consistently better since that point. So don't know what you guys think.
Completely agree.
Yep.
Yeah. 100%. Just on first read, it's obvious, right? Like not even looking at the detail of like actually getting into it. But when you look at just the general tone and tenor of how people have been discussing the lists, you don't see somebody coming out and saying, that's my wife, by the way. You don't see somebody coming out and saying like, oh, this thing is way broken. It's undercosted by 100 points or something like that, right? Like that's not the discussion that happens anymore.
No.
It's like, if maybe people are talking about points, it's like, well, I could see this being 20 points less or 20 points more or something minimal, or maybe this battalion isn't quite right. Like it's this tiny, it's like, you know, sort of smoothing the edges, not taking a hard corner into a circle. Right.
Yeah, no, it's going to be interesting. So obviously they've announced they're doing a general's handbook every year. So it's going to be interesting to see what tweaks we get moving forward. So and as you say, it's I think the game's in a reasonably good place at the minute with points. I know there's, like you say, 20 points here, 20 points there, a couple of things that people have made, but the ability to make adjustments is just brilliant. If anybody's been in the game any period of time when we used to have to sit for 3-4 years with the same points in the same book and the same one build that only worked. So it's just a different game. It always makes me laugh when you see on Facebook people complaining about things. It's like, you've only got to wait like, you know, not that long and it all will be fixed. You feed back enough. So
it is a different world. I get into like that like old man mode where I'm like, you whippersnappers don't know how good you've got it. We used to wait 5-10 years for an army book. You don't know what you're missing. If your book was bad, you were just bad. That was it. It was just bad forever.
Yeah, if you were that Batonian player, yeah.
So yes, absolutely. I don't want to be old grumpy man mode, but that's what it leads to.
And I think that you can see that, like, quantitatively, like if you look at the actual FAQ and the number of actual adjustments that were made, they were a lot less. Like, look at this round in January, and then compare it to the prior August update. Like, it's a night and day difference for the number of adjustments that needed to be made. It's clear that we're on a trajectory that is a very positive one.
Yeah, you know, and I think you answered actually the next question I had on the next question I had on the list, which was how has running the tournament changed in, you know, the Age of Sigmar. I think if I hear you, the answer is it's gotten smoother, right? Like not only from the benefit of your years of experience, but also just because it's become an easier thing given what's going on.
Yeah, it's by far the easiest it's ever been. I mean, we used to spend a lot of our time judging. On 8th edition, 7th edition, we used to send there were clipboards, big FAQ packs, constant questions on either line of sight, angles, rules queries. You just don't get in there. So rare. I can't. You could probably count on a hand the amount of real rules queries you get over a weekend over the last couple of years. It's just brilliant because you just get to watch. It's why we've been able to do more media coverage and things like that, because you just feel a bit freer with your time, which has been cool, and it just creates less tension at the table, which is even better for everybody, I think. So we've noticed it with the GT finals and things at Case Workshop, where you get a lot of non-tournament players playing tournaments that think they necessarily have to act in a different way. Because the game is what it is, you just don't get the tension you used to get, where you had to whip your rule book out and go, off our page 5, paragraph 6, if you look here, you'll find that it works this way, and you'd win the game on some sort of mechanic that, and as an experienced player, and the other guy doesn't, and he feels sour about it. You just doesn't tend to happen anymore. It's good.
Good.
Yeah, I agree. It's funny because I've been to a couple tournaments in the last year where I think there was one actual judge call, like the whole 2 days. You know what I mean? Like this is a 40 or 50 person tournament, and there's like one real call for like a rules question of like where a judge had to make a decision and didn't just say, oh, it's actually just pointed out something simple in the rules that the person had forgotten, or was answering a question about their own scenarios that the TO had written that wasn't like core rules. You know what I mean? Like, wait, what did you mean here in this scenario pack? Right? Because it wasn't just a standard scenario.
Yeah.
So, I see stuff more about that than I see it about anything else. I think you made that point of like using those existing scenarios. It's known territory, and they're good. Like we play every weekend when I play, we just use a bunch of the scenarios out of the book. Now we use a bunch of all the different ones, not just the match play ones. We've played around with like the Triumph of Treachery ones and the match play one, or sorry, the standard pitch battle ones, as well as like the Coalition of Death. We'll just adapt them for the number of players we have, and it's all good. Like you can roll them out and go, and it's fun. So
there's so many options at the moment. So many options to play. I don't think you'd ever get through them. Just when you think of all the Realm Gate ones you could do, the open war cards. Don't know if you guys reviews those. Obviously, every book that comes out, there's a couple of scenarios in it. So yeah, there's tons of them.
Yeah, absolutely. So, all right, here's my next question. I think this is the one. It's time for advice from Dan. All right, so if you were talking to a newer TO, they're where you were circa 2008, 2009, they want to run something of their own. What's your one piece of advice you think you did right and you would tell them to do from the beginning? And what's the one thing you think you did wrong, or the thing you would change if you had it to do over?
Well, the first one is not really. It sounds a bit cheeky, but the first one is do it, because we need more events. We need more fresh events, especially because I'm conscious at some point we are, if we're not there now, we're going to be those old guys that I looked at when we started to run it, thinking you don't know what you're doing, you don't know what you're talking about. This isn't what players want. It's important, I think, that people come in with a fresh idea and say, yeah, we can do this, and go out and do it. So my advice would be, yeah, do it. The other thing is just, I think you've just got to concentrate on running the event that you would want to run. If you're absolutely certain that people want to play Warhammer the way you enjoy it, then do that. Stick to it. Do not listen to. Take feedback on board, obviously, but I always think the worst thing is when events go, here's our pack, and then like 2 people go on and shout at them on the internet, and they're like, oh, we'll change it. No. Put your pack out, do what you want, stick to your guns. If you think it's good, then fine. If it turns out it's not, well, okay, you'll get the feedback afterwards, but I think it's better than all this chopping and changing and mucking about, basically. So that would be it. It would be stick to your guns, put your pack out the way you want to play Warhammer. In terms of doing things that we would have improved on, I think sometimes it's dealing with some of the stuff you don't think you'd have to deal with, that you got to be aware of. Cheating, a little bit of a naughty thing, doesn't really happen in the tournament scene, but I think you've got to have some sort of policy in mind for what you're going to do if this occurs and how you deal with it. It's just trying to think of different scenarios and make sure that you've got a bit of an out. It's very rare, but the GT over the years, we've had two indications of dice cheating, one at a very late stage of the tournament, quite a big one. And you will have, in Age of Sigmar, I don't think you'll have the rule stuff you used to have. It used to be list problems and bits and pieces you'd have, and you'd have to have something in there. But Yeah, I think it's just that, and I think it's just making a case of trying to promote your event, especially if you're new. There's so many avenues, so many podcasts and things that people are willing to talk to you about and promote your event. I think that it's just a case of going out there and trying to get it covered so that you can do it, and listening to the feedback afterwards. But initially, sticking to whatever you want to do. I think.
You present it's a really good point. So in my normal life, I'm a software developer. Okay. And I work agile. I'm not going to bore everybody with talking about agile, even though I am an adherent. But one of the things you stick to is once you commit to work, you do the work. And then after it's done, there's an inspect and adapt phase every time, right? You finish everything you had committed to do. And then you look back once you're done and say, what could we have done better? What did we do right? Right. And so I think that's a good, in the same, applying that same methodology to the tournament makes sense. Right, where you would say, okay, if you're in flight, don't try to fix the plane while you're flying it. Basically, right? Land the plane, pull it up, and now let's get the mechanics out here and see what we can do. Right. So yeah, I think that makes perfect sense.
Yeah, I mean, you will come under some flack for it, especially as the event gets bigger. I remember some years we used to get shouted out all the time for, "Oh, you can't possibly do that," and we just ignore it. Or the one that used to, taking back on Tom's point, because we don't have special composition packs now, we don't really have it. But back in the day where we had this hard comp, we'd say you couldn't take this, you couldn't take that. Of course, you get all the rage. You've ruined my army. This is going to be the next broken thing. And actually, we were vindicated. Luckily, say luckily because you just never know. Every year that what we did worked, and those things didn't come to pass. But if we just changed it off the internet rage, then we'd have been changing it every 2 minutes. So I think it's a good place. If you're thinking of doing it now, it's a great time to do it because you don't have that to contend with. But again, in your little group, you might decide to start a tournament locally, and then somebody says to you, "No, you've got to change Destiny dice, or you've got to do this." And I'd be very, very wary of actual game rules changes or anything like that, unless that's really what the kind of event you want. You might decide that that's the thing that you think it needs, is that it needs rules changes, and that there is a market there for that. And if that's your thing, then go with it. But generally, I wouldn't change core rules, and I'd try and stick to whatever you think the best experience is.
When we did the US released their tournament organizer pack recently, which is a huge mega document, I was tasked with the custom rules section. And I went through and looked at all the tournaments and how the different events were playing custom rules. And basically, it came down to unspecialized. Most of it was all clarifications we ended up with in suggestions. And there were only actually 2 mechanics that some events were prohibiting or banning or changing how they were functioning. So in those, and everybody agreed that we wanted language heavily warding against changing core mechanics, warding against, so that if you do implement these, this is some ways that some events have chosen to do with it, but we don't recommend it type of thing, so that people, and it was just fascinating to me. I felt like I didn't do any work. It ended up being a 3 to 4 page document, because there weren't a lot of custom rules. How refined the actual rules pack is abundantly clear when you compare it to old comp packs, for example.
Yeah.
Yep.
It's a good point though that you bring back, because again, I suppose we didn't mention that, but one of our other key sort of design or aims of when we did this, apart from doing the tournament that we want to do, is that we kept it as close to Warhammer as possible, because you're dealing with a wide range of people. And if you want to attract a wide range of people, you can't have your version of Warhammer and somebody else's version of Warhammer. They have to be quite aligned. And in the previous editions, if you played, for example, ETC, the European Team Championships Warhammer, that could actually be quite a distance from normal rulebook out the rulebook Warhammer. Again, we don't have it too much now, but if you start changing, okay, we don't play the priority role, we have you go, I go turns, for example. That's not how most people play the game. So I think you've got to be wary of those kind of changes, really.
Right. Yeah, and the more of that you stack on, the more of a barrier of entry it is for people to get in there. Not just because they might like the way Warhammer is or whatever, but also because then they got to learn more stuff and think about more stuff to even go play in your game, right? Whereas if you say, look, we're playing Warhammer, this is what it is, and we've got these other events. If you're not a hard edge tournament dude, you're participating in this for a narrative reason or for a painting reason or whatever, as you mentioned, there's these other side things you can participate in. Do so as you wish. Mm-hmm. Right. Mm-hmm. But the game is more or less the game. Cool. Okay. I know what I need to do to show up and have an army. right? Like that's it. I've great thumbs up. You know, like I've got my. I don't need to learn anything new or minimally new. I just see some question answers and move on.
Well, not only that, you actually end up subdividing the community when you do that, because what you're doing is you're creating a bunch of sub communities that are playing, you know, in name they're playing the same game, but functionally on the table it's not the same game. And so by you know, that's one of the things that I've appreciated about the community, even globally, is that you know, most of the communities are playing fairly straight out of the book. Again, there are small adjustments here or there, but in general, it's fairly consistent.
Yeah, not that there's anything wrong with having like a more boutique tournament where you change a lot of stuff. That's fine. If that's what you can, if that's, you know, if your goal is to make a certain type of tournament, then it goes back to what Dan said of, you know, play the tournament or run the tournament you would want to play in, right? Yeah. And if you know that there's enough people there who are interested in that thing, great. Change as much as you want.
Yeah.
Right. If you know that people are going to be there to support you and want to stand up. But if you're talking about a broad-based tournament, then, you know, it might help you not to make massive sweeping changes. I think that's the difference, right?
And to be very clear, like Vince and I go to multiple tournaments every year, or at least I do, where there are sweeping rules changes, you know, as to how things interact and scenarios and stuff like that. We're going to one this weekend, but we know what we're getting ourselves into. You know, like
that's what I want to participate in when I go to that. But at the same time, if I go to a bigger, different tournament, I also enjoy that experience,
the flavor,
of the sort of straight out of like some match play scenarios and stuff like that. That's also good. And those are the larger tournaments, and purposely, right? The smaller narrative tournament, like we're going to this weekend, is and purposely kept. You know, like it's everything is built toward it from the tables up. Yes. And to do that and to have that whole experience, it is kept small. And that's why it's one of the reasons I love it, to be completely honest. And so it's a big enough world for all. And moreover, the fact that you don't have massive compacts and all that stuff on top of it means you can build your own framework on top if you want. Right? Because now people don't have to learn one thing, the base rules, then a massive compact, then a second rule set for what you want to layer on top. Like that's just untenable. All right. Final question for Dan, and then we'll let him go because it's late where he is. We're going to let him get to bed because it's the middle of the week.
Yeah, I've got a sick child by the sounds of it as well, so I've been on mute because he's there screaming in the background, so we'll have to make a shift fairly soon. So, no, let's go for it.
No, one last question. Here we go. What are you hoping, like, what if you had to sum up sort of one hope for SCGT for the future, besides, you know, you want to see it continue growing and stuff like that? What's your one thing, maybe if you, or some of your pipe dream ideas that you're not sure you could ever pull off, but if you could swing for the fences? Something like that. The arc for the future of SCGT.
It's tough, isn't it? I don't really know because I kind of like the format we've got now, but I think I'd like to make it something even more enjoyable for those guys that are playing in that lore area. In the guy that aren't competing for the win, I think that would be the ideal. Is just really have something that engages people and drives them to create armies. I think we did it quite well in the previous years when we had Celestial Compass. We did. I can't remember what we called it. Oh, the Ultra Vizier we had last year, but especially the Compass year. A lot of people really took on board that bit of lore, and we got it out there early, and people did armies based around that. And I think
that's
even
cool.
We were mentioning White Dwarf at one point because I think Ben Johnson was talking about it in something he did. It was called Little Easter Egg to See. So yeah, I'd like to do more of that. I think that would be cool, so that people really get on board with the theme of the event. But that requires us as organisers, I think, to go out and push a little bit more about what we're doing and do it early. So it's something that I'm well aware of. I think it's always the problem with where the event lies is it's my busiest time, and it's Christmas for people that even aren't busy at that time. So creatively, it causes a little bit of a block for getting things out early. But yeah, I'd love to do that. Really, I think it'd be cool to just get people engaged on the thing.
Awesome. I love it. It sounds like that's a fantastic answer. And I'm sure I know there are a large number of people that happen to have Neo in front of their name, many of which live in the UK and you know quite well, who would be more than excited about that. So we'll close up. We'll let Dan get to bed since it's almost midnight where he is. And I'll say, Dan, thank you very much, sir. It's always a great time to have you on the show. We really appreciate it. You know, you're welcome back anytime. We're going to get you back hopefully at the end of next year so we can get back on our normal schedule.
Yeah, that'd be really good. My apologies. I had a nightmare and had to cancel on you at the last minute. So yeah, apologies for that.
All good, man. All good. It's good to have you on. And hey, look, I look forward to seeing you, a month from now at DepthCon. Should be a good time.
Definitely, I appreciate it, and thanks for having me on. It's always good fun.
Absolutely. For all of you out there watching, thank you very much. As always, it is deeply appreciated. And of course, we'll see you next Wednesday.